Hello, and welcome back to our series on building our mental might by doing away with lazy thinking. I'm Deb Calvert. I hope by now that you've been able to see several of these videos and that you've subscribed to the YouTube channel so that you can continue to get into this playlist and all the other content that we put out there too. As someone who is getting better and better at critical thinking, I also hope that you're focusing on continual improvement on into the future. Here's a tip for how you can do that. Anytime you make a decision or solve a problem or engage in a heated discussion, after the fact, step back and do some post-mortem analysis. That just means an assessment after the fact, after it's all said and done. I actually prefer to call this capturing the lessons learned. Your objective will be to determine what went well so that you can do it again in the future, and what didn't go so well so that you can learn from it and do things differently the next time. Critical thinking requires this kind of evaluation, objective and honest with yourself. That's the only way you can continue to improve every single time. Now, of course, before we can do that, if you didn't see my last video, you'll want to go back and catch that one. In order to do a good lessons learned, we have to have the humility to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and that we have made mistakes before and that we can learn from every situation. We want to remain open. Let me give you 5 sets of questions that you can ask yourself when you're doing a lessons learned exercise after you've solved a problem, made a decision, or engaged in some sort of heated exchange or some sort of debate or dialogue with somebody who had an opposing view. The first question you could ask yourself is, in what ways did I do a good job of entertaining ideas that were different from my own? In what ways did I access sources that are different from the ones I usually turn to? And then on the reverse side of that, you would ask yourself, in what ways could I do a better job in the future of accessing some sources that aren't my customary ones? In what ways could I be even more open, more receptive to truly considering ideas that are different from my own so that I avoid confirmation bias and groupthink? Second set of questions that you could ask yourself are things like this. What successes did I have in identifying and challenging my own unconscious biases? There's a whole nother video on unconscious bias if you're not familiar with that term, but you'll want to be sure to be aware of it so that you aren't a victim of it. So what successes did you have in identifying and challenging your own unconscious bias? And next time, how could you be quicker to identify and challenge and get past your own unconscious bias? What could you do differently? Third set of questions, how did I manage to appropriately balance my emotion with my reason? What are some things I did really well that when the emotion came up, I didn't overreact or respond too quickly from that place of emotion? Make sure that you look at both sides. What did you do well? And what could you do differently in the future? The fourth family of questions that you could ask would be about when you heard something that was an unsubstantiated claim or was someone's conjecture or opinion. Whether you agreed with it or disagreed with it, did you probe to get the facts? How did you do that? Give yourself a pat on the back and make sure that you know how to replicate that going forward. And On the contrary side of that, if you didn't challenge the unsubstantiated claims, if you didn't spotlight opinions and accepted them too readily as fact, what could you do differently in the future to become even more effective? Last but not least, what questions did I ask that brought new information into this discussion? What questions did I ask that took us beyond what we already knew? What questions did I ask to promote understanding and help everybody have an opportunity to weigh in on what we were discussing? And what questions should I have asked? Which ones did I miss the opportunity to ask? What could I do even better on the next time I'm in a discussion like this one, or solving a problem, or making a decision? At all times, you're aiming for continual incremental improvements that you're making in your own critical thinking. This is like any muscle. You're building up your mental might a little bit at a time, and you're going to keep working on it. It gets easier and easier, and you get stronger and stronger every time you dedicate thought and attention to a process like this.